All right, let's go. So the Rebbe is speaking in this Verbringen from Tafshin Yud Zayin, Yud Al Tammuz, about how Yud Beis Tammuz shouldn't just be something we celebrate one day and then it's over. Rather, we're supposed to feel the incredible revelation of the Geula Yud Beis Tammuz, and it's supposed to continue to inspire us even after Yud Beis Tammuz has ended, and we're days after Yud Beis Tammuz. And the Rebbe gives an example of how things are supposed to be. There are many explanations in Tanya about how after Tzaddik passes away, he's still present in the world, and the limitations of the body are no longer there. But the Rebbe says regarding what way a person feels, it may be true that before the Tzaddik had limitations in the body, and now the Tzaddik has no limitations. But from the way a person feels, those limitations were ways the person could communicate and see the Tzaddik with his eyes. But now the Rebbe says after the Frierdiker of his passing, it may be that the limitations of the body aren't there. We can't see him. All you could see is with your mind, which you can compare seeing with your mind to seeing with your eyes. Even by the greatest Chachamim, the most wisest people, they also experience the difference between things they see with their eyes and things they see with their mind. As halacha is regarding the Sanhedrin. The Sanhedrin is allowed to be in the court if they haven't witnessed the event itself. If they have been privy to see the actual event itself that they are judging, they no longer can be part of that court, because once the Gemara says, so once they see an event, they're no longer able to be partial. So even though they know the same event, the Torah says trust the witnesses. The Torah says that if the witnesses give testimony, that should be absolutely certain to you. Still, that's something which is in the mind. Since they didn't see it, they're able to be witnesses. So although we're talking about this in Sanhedrin, and they are considered to be fantastic, amazing in their wisdom, and to the extent that it says in the Torah when Moshe Rabbeinu appointed the 70 elders, it says it says in the Torah they should stand there with you, and the Talmud explains they should be similar to you. So the very first Sanhedrin in the generation of Moshe Rabbeinu were supposed to be similar to Moshe Rabbeinu, and so to the Sanhedrin of every generation, they have to be connected to the mufla in the Sanhedrin. The mufla in the Sanhedrin is the guy who is head and shoulders above everybody else. So despite the fact that they're supposed to be on par with the mufla guy, and they're supposed to have incredible wisdom, nevertheless, there is a difference between what they see and what they know. How much more so regarding ourselves, we're much lower than the Sanhedrin. So how can the Rebbe expect us to be on this level of being conscious of the Geula Yud Beis Tammuz in a way that it's going to inspire us? There is there's an Ur Chadash, there's a new light that's come to the world, but Hashem wants this new light to be revealed and to impact us. So the new simcha that we should be having from this new light is something that should make our Torah and mitzvahs easier, because the whole point of the Geula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, his redemption was made in a way that should impact the way we think, the way we speak, the way we do, and to reveal Hashem in the world. So that's what it's for. But the question is how he's meant to experience the Geula in such a way when we don't see the Rebbe. That's the Rebbe's question. So the Rebbe says, yes, your feelings are one way, but there is the truth way things really are. It's still with the reality. Every year there's a new light, and in the last years, they were speaking about since the passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe and Tafshin Yud, there's an additional there's more of revelation based Tammuz, because the Frierdiker Rebbe has passed away, and because there's no limitations of the body, it is greater than it was before. And therefore, the Rebbe says, doesn't matter if you feel it or not, that is the way it is. I'm just going to get the door. 1 second. Someone's by the door. It's opened. It's opened. It's opened. The door is opened. The door is opened. Okay. So when the time of the Geula comes every year, the Rebbe says, and especially the year the Rebbe said that Farbrengen was 30 years since the previous Rebbe's redemption, that has to bring us tremendous simcha and tremendous empowerment to spread Torah and mitzvahs and chassidus in everything the Rebbe wants. And that's the point of view based Tmuz. Okay, that's what the Rebbe said in the first part of the Farbrengen. Now let's reread inside the second part of the Farbrengen, page 157. The Beis Harav, in the Friedrich Rebbe's household, and I think no one else is looking inside, so I'll just do it outside. In the Friedrich Rebbe's household, there were many times that the physical condition, the financial condition, was very difficult. Sometimes it was worse than just difficult, but people didn't know about it. And externally, the way his house was conducted, the way the Rebbe's house was conducted, was with great comfort, despite the fact that there was a really hard time. The Rebbe said, I don't know the reason for this. I never asked about it, but that's the way it was, that despite no matter how little money there was, the household was conducted as if they have everything they could possibly want. One of the things that was always done, bisrachvus means in a very comfortable way, in a very extravagant way, if you will. Even when there was no money, when there's still the Friedrich Rebbe would travel, and very often he would travel outside of Russia. And officially, most of the time there were reasons because of health reasons he would go, because of the various spas that were there, in Marienbad, other places. Those are the external reasons. But the inner reason was something else. So once, in those times when there was no money, in the Rebbe's household, the previous Rebbe's household, the Rebbe Rashab, the Rebbe Rashab traveled with his Rebbe's Nishtana Sarah outside of Russia. They either went to Marienbad or to Hamburg. Those two places they went for, officially for health reasons, but again, there was always other reasons. The Rebbe Rashab went into his home, and he brought with him a beautiful cane, which had a silver top, silver handle. When Rebbe Nishtana Sarah saw this staff, saw this cane, she asked him, "What is this? Like, why do we need a cane with a silver handle?" So the Rebbe Rashab responded, "This is a gift for our son, the Friedrich Rebbe." So the Rebbe Nishtana Sarah, she knew very well what the financial situation was. So she said, "It's true that he is our only son, and he has all these virtues, but there's no money right now. The financial situation is very difficult. And how do you put out the last penny?" And maybe, the Rebbe says, maybe it wasn't just the last penny. Maybe you had to borrow money to pay for this silver cane. And now when we need things in the house, we have to borrow more money. We're going to need to borrow money. How can you do that? Rebbe Rasham answered, "I just returned from a trip. On the way, I met a guter yid, a good Jew. That's the way the Rebbeim would refer to other tzaddikim. I met a good Jew together with his son." The Rebbe Rashab said about his son, "When I saw the difference between his son and our son, I was inspired to give him this present. Because I realized how special our son is compared to this other tzaddik son. I just had to give him this present." That's what the Friedrich Rebbe said. The Friedrich Rebbe told the story to the Rebbe, and also the Rebbe said, "I heard this from the Rebbe's Nishtana Sarah." But the Friedrich Rebbe would not say such a story in public, of course. So the Rebbe said, "This is a story that happened with the Friedrich Rebbe," and the Friedrich Rebbe related the story in public. So it's something we need to learn from the story. How does it make sense that they would use to spend some francs? That's the name of the currency that they were using, the country that they were in, to use their last francs to buy a gift for their son. You may want to say that the Friedrich Rebbe needed it to run the melucha, so to speak. Run the melucha, meaning in order to put someone in a position, I guess, I'm just paraphrasing. I'm just using. Perhaps what it means is that just like when a king is coronated, he wears a crown. So maybe the Frierdiker Rebbe needed to be given something to the Rebbe Rashab, this cane, in order to become the Rebbe afterwards. But the Rebbe said it wasn't needed until that point. It wasn't needed. So you can't say this was something about him that he needed in order to do his job or whatever it was. It wasn't something that was necessary because he didn't get it till that point. So why was it so important to get him this gift? And why would the Rebbe Rashab go into debt to get this gift? So the answer is, we find the Chassidus says that there's a certain kind of love you have for an only child. When the marriage of your only child happens, or when your only child is imprisoned. So when something happens to your only child, Chassidus says it's like it touches the very core of your neshama. It's beyond logic and reason. You can ask questions in logic and reason when it comes to your only child, because the essence of your soul has no limitations. But still, the Rebbe said that's the answer. It's his only child, therefore, you're right, doesn't make sense, but it's his only child, therefore, there are no explanations to talk about an only child. That's the answer. However, it still doesn't make sense. When your only child isn't suffering, is not his marriage, he's not in prison, so it doesn't affect the very core of your soul. So that means that when he's not in prison, so you don't feel that different kind, that special connection to him. Only when something unusual happens, like his wedding, or he's released from prison. So what is the explanation in this situation? The Frierdiker Rebbe wasn't in prison, it wasn't his marriage, and yet the Rebbe Rashab acted in a way that's beyond logic and reason to buy him this cane that he couldn't afford. The answer is, when he met this other tzaddik, he met this good Jew, who was also someone who walked in holy places, and yet he saw the great difference between his son and this other tzaddik's son. So that also aroused in him this love from his very core, in a way that he could not make any calculations of logic and reason. He said, I have to buy this for my son, realizing that it was similar to the Frierdiker Rebbe leaving prison, the Frierdiker Rebbe getting married, him seeing the great distinction between his son and the other tzaddik's son. That's what pushed that, that's what motivated him to buy him this silver cane he couldn't afford. So besides the fact that he bought him this cane, everything's by divine providence, especially by a tzaddik. What's the meaning of this specific gift? He bought him a cane with a silver handle. The meaning of a cane, it says in the Mishnah that a cane is about rulership. Cane is about leadership. In Klippa, in the unholy realm, a monarchy is associated with, a monarch is generally associated with being a dictator against the will of the people. In Kedusha, in the realm of holiness, a monarch, leadership is associated with the people wanting to serve their king. Like we say every Ma'ariv, Hashem's sovereignty is something we accepted with our desire. We wanted him to be king over us. Like the staff of Moshe Rabbeinu. The staff of Moshe Rabbeinu was used through which Moshe Rabbeinu did all kinds of miracles and wonders. So that's why the Rebbe Rashab bought him this staff. It was something it alludes to the idea of that he was giving his son this message of him being the leader of the Jewish people. Now, there are different kinds of staffs. There's what's called makal choivlim, makal noyam. There's a staff that's used to hit. There's a staff which is a staff of pleasantness. As Rebbe Rash explains regarding the Jewish people leaving Egypt, it says they left Egypt with their staffs in their hand. So they had the staff in their hand, they left Egypt in order to chase out the evil. It says in the Talmud, just like you hit a dog with a staff, so when they left Egypt, they had to have a staff in their hand. Since there was such evil in Egypt, so they had to have a staff in hand. But there's also a staff they're going to have when Mashiach will come, as Rebbe Rash says. And the purpose of this staff, when Mashiach will come, is not in order to chase evil away, to rule over evil, because when Mashiach will come, it says Hashem will remove all impurity from the world. So the idea of this staff, when Mashiach will come, what's that staff about? It's called the staff of pleasantness, not a staff to break any evil, rather a staff that's meant to lift up, to bring close. There was one time by the Tzemach Tzedek that I think it was at Marash. I remember who it was. Someone needed someone felt that they have no love or reverence or faith in Hashem. So Rebbe Rashab took a staff and says, "Here." He touch this person with his staff, and he says, "Here is love, here is reverence, here is faith." So you could use some of that, right? That'll be great. This Rebbe just taps with the staff, and all of a sudden, boom. So, what's the meaning of this the staff with the silver handle? In addition to the simple meaning that he bought him a beautiful staff, there's also an additional meaning that he's telling the Frierdiker Rebbe the way you should rule over the Jewish people is with love, is with pleasantness, because the word silver in Hebrew is related to the word desire. So kesef comes to nechsef. He should lead, but the way he should lead is in a way of with love. He should lead with love. As the previous Rebbe once remarked about two different Rebbes, he said the Frierdiker explained the difference between two different Rebbes. He said one Rebbe was associated more with the power of desire, and the other Rebbe ruled more with the power of pleasure. So the difference between desire and pleasure, when you operate with desire is nurturing. You want something, this is what has to happen, and the desire breaks whatever inclination you have in yourself not to do what you desire, and you override that with your power of desire. Desire breaks through your various inclinations in your body. It says, I'm going to go this way. So a certain Rebbe, the way he led the Jewish people was with his power of desire. This is where we need to go, guys, and everyone had to come along. But then there is the power of pleasure. Pleasure causes a connection. Pleasure draws the person in. So the Rebbe Rashab once was speaking to his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he was a child, famously, and the Frierdiker asked the Rebbe Rashab, why did Hashem give us 2 eyes and 2 ears? And the Rebbe Rashab answered, morning, that the reason why Hashem gave us 2 eyes and 2 ears is because the Frierdiker at that time was having a hard time trying to figure out the difference between, if I remember correctly, shin and sin. So having a hard time understanding what the purpose of difference in shin and sin is. The Rebbe Rashab gave his son an example. He says the shin and the sin have an eye. The shin has an eye on the left, and the sin has a eye on the right. That's the opposite. Yeah, the opposite. The sin is on the left, and the shin's on the right. So the Rebbe Rashab said that Hashem gave us also 2 eyes. Why Hashem give us 2 eyes? We have one eye that we're meant to see the good in others, and one eye that we're supposed to look at candies and cookies and physical things. So we're supposed to look, in other words, skeptically. We don't need the physical pleasures and stuff. But so you're supposed to be critical of yourself. Look at yourself with the left eye and see where you could be. But on others, it's look with the right eye. So specifically, the Frierdiker said on another occasion how in the Sefer Torah there are 3 different kinds of letters: smaller letters, average size letters, and larger letters. And he said that every Jew is like a Torah. He says you have to look at another person and their virtues you have to see with big letters, and their deficiencies you have to see with small letters. And regarding yourself, the opposite, you have to look at your deficiencies with big letters to highlight your deficiencies, and your virtues you have to look at them in small letters. So the Frierdiker Rebbe was given this silver cane by his father because his father wanted him to always, the word silver again means love, the way he should lead, not just with his power of sheer willpower, but rather he should rule the Jewish people with love, which is to see in everyone, hear in everyone, the goodness in them. As we see, the Rebbe said by the previous Rebbe, the way he led the Jewish people was with love. He would lift people up and draw them close. Despite whatever spiritual station that person may have been, the Frierdiker gave that person unconditional love, and this is a lesson to all those who are connected to the Frierdiker and going in his path. That they have to operate with ways of pleasantness, yes, with power, yes, with the power of pleasure. The power of pleasure. That means you have to be powerful, not to give in to anything, but don't break the other person. Contrary, you have to lift the other person up and bring them closer to their mitzvahs and to chassidus with pleasure. It's very interesting. The previous Rebbe actually told my grandfather, he said, whatever you do, you should do with pleasure. It's very think about a very fascinating concept. The idea of desire versus pleasure. You could lead another person, and what's motivating you is something that may be very important, and therefore you have to do A, B, and C. But if you're operating because you enjoy what you're doing, you're more nurturing to the person that you're talking to. If you feel pleasure in the person that you're speaking to, you feel goodness in them, and you feel goodness in what you're trying to do, so you're going to be more nurturing. If you just feel this has to get done, you're just going to be more demanding. You're going to like steamroll the other person. So the message that I was saying over here is that you have to not break the other person, and yes, you have to have power, but the power you have to use is the power of pleasure. That's the message. It's actually on my grandfather's monument in his tombstone. It says that whatever he did, as the previous Rebbe told him, was with fargenigin. Fargenigin is the word with pleasure. Okay, I have something I can live with today. I don't know about you guys, but I have something I can go with today. Go with fargenigin. When the Rebbe Rashab had to buy him the silver cane with the cane with the silver handle. Why? Because he's giving him this message. You know what your leadership has to be about? It has to be to see the good in others, see the good in what you're doing, and just enjoy what you're doing, whatever it is. Any questions or comments? Zev knows what fargenigin is. He's heard that before. Have a great day, Reb Zev. Great day, David. Yitrot.